Retail sales and factory output in China slumped to two-year lows in April, while unemployment climbed to two-year highs. The new figures show the growing economic damage wrought by the country's ongoing COVID-19 lockdowns. Retail sales in China falling more than 11% for the month. That's year on year, a drop last seen at the outbreak of the pandemic. Industrial production, meanwhile, fell about 3%. Unemployment reached more than 6% in urban areas. Dozens of Chinese cities remain in tight lockdown, including the world's largest port city, Shanghai. All right, my colleague Clifford Coonan joins me in studio for more. Clifford, how unexpected or expected were these numbers?
Well, they're certainly surprising, and they're worse than the forecasts had predicted. But at the same time, what's really surprising, I think, is just the extent, the depth of the slowdown. It was obviously largely because of the lockdown in the major cities, but it's hit retail sales, which the government has long relied on to prop up the economy. Things like passenger car sales are down 47%. And that sort of feeds into other areas. For example, the passenger car sales falling so much, that accounts for so many jobs. So we had this problem with unemployment as well rising. And the figures are the worst in 2 years. But when you think about it, 2 years ago was also pandemic related, so really these are the worst since they've been records in China, particularly because unemployment data is quite recent in China. So we're looking at all sectors of the economy struggling from this, and it's prompting a lot of questions about the depth of the economy.
One of the questions it's prompting is, what does it mean for Western business? So many of them, relying on cities like Shenzhen, Shanghai to either manufacture, to ship, to both. I mean, what does that mean for them? Are they reconsidering what they're doing in China?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of foreign teachers in China, for example, and one of the headmasters of one of the most prominent of foreign schools in China just left. He didn't, without saying anything, because he didn't think he'd be able to get out. The lockdown has had a huge impact on people, and it's caused quite a scandal in China. And it's not unusual. A lot of people, foreigners working in China now, are worried because the level of micromanagement that's going on with the lockdown is incredible. And it means that if you're trying to hire foreigners, and China still needs foreign talent to keep economic growth going, it's becoming a real challenge.
It means the government's almost more inscrutable in some ways. You don't know when a lockdown is coming. You don't know if you're going to be able to move around or do business.
Exactly, and it shows up. I mean, I think in some ways this is Xi Jinping's Churchill moment. He's treating it like a war on COVID.
Standing his ground.
Exactly, and which means he's being very, very rigid, and the level of micromanagement is incredible. People, every 3 days you get a knock on the door and you're forced to take a test, and this is proving a real problem. And
what's the domestic support for that line, though, within China? I mean, is there disagreement with this hard line when you're seeing the economic numbers just plummet like this?
Well, I think this is going to be the factor. It's going to really hit support for the government, because they're thinking, because Omicron isn't as bad as other variants, there's increasingly a lot of dissatisfaction about this, and there's a lot of censorship on trying to stop it.
Is this a phase when we look at Omicron? And I mean, we know the pandemic isn't necessarily a phase, but does Beijing see this perhaps as a phase? Once they get through this, they'll just turn the economy back on?
Yeah, I think there is a feeling that you can turn it on and off, and this is going to be obviously a test of that. I think to a certain extent they can, because foreign companies are still deeply embedded there, with the supply chain.
They're not all going to be in Vietnam or Thailand.
These countries just don't have the infrastructure that China has. They don't have the scale that China has. And India isn't there yet, another possibility. So I think people are still going to be in China, but I think the thinking about China has changed. Even in Germany, which is very, very involved, heavily invested in China, is also now looking at things like we saw Volkswagen recently is looking quite closely at the United States.
America, that's right, yeah.
So people are thinking there's less of a sort of a focus on China that there was.
Interesting.
So ultimately, the economy will come back, but maybe in a different way.
All right. My colleague, DW Business's Clifford Coonan, thank you very much.